Prior to 1999, the history of fishing games on consoles had been a fairly sparse one. A few in the 8-bit era, a few in the 16-bit era, and a few in the 32-bit era. But by 1999, Southern culture had really made an inroads in mainstream culture, and the number of fishing games exploded. The N64 had a few, Bassmasters 2000, In Fisherman Bass Hunter 64. The PlayStation had a ton. Black Bass with Blue Marlin, Fisherman's Bait, a Bass Challenge, Bass Landing, Bass Rise. They even pulled a Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo by releasing a sequel to Fisherman's Bait within the same calendar year, called Fisherman's Bait 2 Big Ol' Bass. One of Sega's in-house development teams decided to join the fray with SEGA Bass Fishing, which had one major draw: the fishing controller. Back on the House of the Dead 2 episode, we discussed Sega deciding not to make available a peripheral gun controller into a game designed for it because of cultural sensitivity. But the Dreamcast as a console had a reputation as being the peripheral console. As we go through this series, we will see games designed for all sorts of things, including keyboards and even maracas. The PlayStation actually did have their own fishing controller, but the Dreamcast had the rep as being the wacky console that pushed boundaries, and so of course it has a fishing controller, even though the console finished its full run with a grand total of 4 fishing games, 3 of which came more than a full year after the controller's release. The other is SEGA Bass Fishing. The game has 2 modes that have slightly different rules and intentions, but ultimately have the same goal in mind: cast your line, shimmy your lure, and catch as many fish as you can in the time frame. Honestly though, SEGA Bass Fishing is charmingly casual in its enforcement and timekeeping, and provides an ample number of continues to allow you to achieve your goals. As my new best friend the announcer puts it,
enjoy your fishing.
Using the fishing controller or the regular controller both work just as well. The controller is shaped like a fishing rod and operates much the same. It's really just about your preferences. The regular controller fits better in the hand and gives you an encapsulatable experience, but also provides drastically less opportunity for you to look like a deviant, with a vibration so violent it tingled my nerves. This game began life as an arcade game known as Get Bass in Japan, and had an even more involved peripheral there. The home fishing controllers, even the off-brand ones, are such rare commodities these days that I found myself playing with the regular controller most of the time. But I honestly played this game a lot. It's a fairly thin game as far as content. The 2 modes each have 3 courses plus 1 unlockable each, and you're just fishing in all of them. But the structure is so forgiving, and the presentation is so sunny, that I unexpectedly found myself coming back to it pretty often. And I'd have to admit, it's one of my most played of the first few dozen Dreamcast releases. A huge part of this appeal for me has to be credited to Hisaki Nimiya, who provides enthusiastic, bewitchingly goofy narration and encouragement throughout the game. He is apparently almost entirely a back-of-house presence, credited as something of an essential bilingual component of Sega's team when it came to communication between the Japanese and English factions, and his indefinable hybrid accent gave me a litany of random quotes that I couldn't stop dispensing to anyone within earshot. from the hysterical disappointment beat he takes when your catch is on the diminutive side,
No! Small one.
to the spaced-out drift of
It's gone!
when you miss a potential catch in your vicinity. Just consistently through the experience, he was a positive, funny, and memorable presence.
Okay, an average size. Good job!
And it was just a joy to spend time with him out on the water.
Oh, a big one!
That sense of whimsy unexpectedly extends to the courses themselves. Most of them are pretty straightforward, but if you complete all of the default courses on the primary mode, you unlock a secret fourth locale that is set on the moat of a spooky dungeon, complete with skeletons and shit in the water. And I just loved the subtle sense of fun the game brought to an otherwise pretty sober framework. Now don't get me wrong, games do have to control well to be worth playing, but it's amazing how forgiving you can be when a game matches those controls with good vibes. And SEGA Bass Fishing is a great example of how a game can create a welcoming mood that makes you want to come back, even if its depth is fundamentally on the shallow end. Next time, please mind the vehicle clearance below the Tyrannosaurus, thank you.